One of the key issues with interest rate hedging is making sure that you understand the timing and the nature of the underlying transaction that needs to be hedged. A timeline can be useful here. So in this example, we are now at the 1st of May, and we need to borrow 84 million on the 1st of September for a period of 6 months. So in my plan, I'd write out some sort of analysis, as I have done at the top of the screen here, to make sure that I've got a real fix on what's going on. Because if I get the basics wrong, like the timing of the loan, or in some questions it's an investment, not a loan, if I get the basics wrong, I'm not going to score many marks for the numbers at all. Then in my answer plan, I would copy the requirements in and write in how long it's going to take for the technical parts, multiplying by 1.95 minutes per mark, and making sure that I understand that I am doing calculations for the options and the swap, but then I have to compare with the results already obtained for forwards and futures, and that there are marks available for discussion. Part B is fairly clear. We have to criticise some views, which are given in Exhibit 3. In this debrief, we're going to focus mainly on Requirement A. And in Requirement A, we're going to start off by looking at interest rate options. And I think it's important to use the word processing package to drive your answer in Part A, and not try to write your points out in the spreadsheet, because that's very difficult to do, especially if you're trying to score professional skills marks, which requires you to develop your points. So in Part A, I would start off my answer by just defining, as I have done, the nature of the underlying transaction, and then just to start to talk about the sorts of options that are going to be required. There's only one option given here, which is a September option. I'd convert it into a percentage, that's my preference, you don't have to do that, and I'd work out the number of contracts and how much it costs. And as I do that, I would just do my workings in the spreadsheet. So my 84 contracts, okay, so just going into a spreadsheet, we've got an 84 million transaction, and we're told in the question that the contract size is 2 million. But any loan we take out will be for 6 months, so if interest rates go up, the loan will cost more. And that means that we need to adjust the number of contracts to reflect the term of the loan divided by the standard term of the option. So the number of contracts will be 84 million divided by 2 million, but then multiplied by 2 because I need double the number of 3-month option contracts. And that's where my 84 comes from. Then I have to recognise that this is a put option that's needed, and that the premium given in the question is 0.411, and my preference is to leave things as a percentage. The outcome will depend on the interest rate future price on the 1st of September. And to forecast that, I'm going to use basis. Basis is the difference between future and the base rate. And the base rate in this question is given, so that's 4.5%. So the difference between the future and the base rate is 0.45. That exists because there's 5 months of timing difference between the 1st of May base rate and the end of September, which is when the September future expires. By the 1st of September, only 1 month of timing remains, and so a fifth of the basis should remain. We are told to assume that the base rate goes up by 0.6%, and that allows us to make a forecast of the September future, which is going to be 0.09 above the base, so 5.19%. And once I've got that, I can forecast my outcome. If the base rate's 5.1, my actual loan is 0.5 above that. The option that I've taken out is a put option at 4.75%. When I close it out, the future is 5.19, which I've just calculated in cell G13, And so I'm making a profit, shown here as a negative cost, of negative 0.44%. And so my net outcome is the cost of the loan, net off against the profit from the option, add on the premium, and that's 5.571%. And that allows me to make a comparison against the forward and the future, whose results are given in the question in percentage terms. So we've got a set of calculations here that are easy for the marker to follow, easy for you to follow too. Everything's in percentages, which marries up with the question, because forwards and futures are given in percentages there. But anyway, I would work in percentages generally. And this will be complemented by your commentary in the word processing document, where we're going to be talking about the meaning of these numbers. But I'm going to allow you to refer back to the solution for that part. Now let's move on to have a look at the swap. So the nature of the swap is not given in the question, and we have to figure out what's going to happen. We're told that the variable rate that Lurgshall can borrow at is the base rate plus 0.5, and the counterparty can borrow at base rate plus 1.5. So there's a difference of 1. So Lurgshall has got much cheaper access to variable rate finance. It also has cheaper access to fixed rate finance, but the difference isn't as much. It's only 0.5%. So Lurgshall has got access to that very cheap variable rate finance. And this means that there's the potential, if I look at the difference in the differences, of 0.5% gain from the swap before considering fees. And the fees quoted in the question are 10 basis points or 0.1% for both parties. So there's a potential for 0.3% gain after the fee. And what's going to happen is that Lurgshall is going to borrow at a variable rate. And then it's going to swap to a fixed rate. And once I've identified that, I can go through the mechanics. It's going to borrow at a variable rate, so that's going to be base rate plus 0.5. It's going to pay a fee, that's going to be 0.1. And the swap will mean that it receives the variable rate, the base rate, back. And then the fixed rate that it pays in exchange will be set so that it makes a gain of half of that 0.3%. So given that it can borrow at 5.6 by itself, it wants to have an outcome that's 0.15 better, so 5.45. So far we are paying base rate plus 0.5, we're receiving base rate, so that's a net so far of a cost of 0.5, and there's a fee of 0.1, so far we've got a net cost of 0.6. 5.45 less 0.6 is 4.85, and that's what I'm going to pay in the fixed rate. I'd have a brief bit of narrative in my word processing document talking about that as the outcome, and that's less expensive than the option, it's marginally more expensive than the forward and the future, and that kicks into a brief debate to pick up the discussion marks about where you would go, and that can pick up some of the risks, the drawbacks, the uncertainties associated with the different hedging techniques. This is covered well in the solution, and you can read that in your own time. A brief look at the final bit of the question. There are plenty of opportunities in Part B to come up with some valid criticisms of this core thought that Treasury management doesn't contribute to strategic success. And you could tackle that by talking about the functions of Treasury, liquidity, corporate finance, cost of capital, risk management, and why that matters, especially for a company that's looking to dramatically expand, as this one is. You could also reflect on the impact of poor decision making, on the need for oversight of junior members. Lots of possible points, and I'll leave you to pick up some of those in the solution. The professional marks can be accessed by using the numbers that you've calculated in a sensible way, through your criticism of the Chief Executive's views, and for your understanding that a company that is dramatically expanding and needs to plan its liquidity and hedging absolutely needs the expert advice that senior Treasury Department managers can provide.